A shock government move this afternoon which could spell disaster for the great Pegwell Bay hoverport scheme. At a press conference called a few hours ago, it was revealed that after 2 public inquiries and almost 20 months of delay, the government has decided to give the scheme's opponents yet another chance to kill it. Bob Sutton reports.
And so the great Pegwell Bay saga looks all set to drag on into another agonizing delay. And this time it's a delay which could finally exasperate Hoverloyd and kill the whole project stone dead. This afternoon's press conference was called by the Mayor of Ramsgate, Alderman Cyril Barton. He revealed that the Minister of Housing and Local Government had written to him saying that people who objected to the original plans would be allowed another 14 days for further representations. The government finally gave outline planning permission for the hoverport to be built at Pegwell Bay on January the 9th after 2 public inquiries and an 18 months delay. On January the 22nd, Hoverloyd, who want to build the giant international hoverport at the cost of £1 million, submitted plans for a temporary port. This would enable them to start operating with the giant SRN-4 this year. And they stressed that a decision by next Monday was imperative because work would have to start early in May. Now comes this latest bombshell. The minister says no decision can be taken on the plan until people who gave evidence at the 2 public inquiries have had time to make further representations. A few hours ago, the mayor accused the government of employing delaying tactic against the hoverport scheme. He said, "We are extremely concerned that when everything that could possibly be said has been said, there is this further hold-up." And he added, "I cannot think why the minister has done this, but we're all aware that a hoverport is being built in Dover for the benefit of British Rail." The mayor's already launched a civic counterattack. He sent an urgent message to the Prime Minister, warning him that there's now very real danger of Hoverloyd pulling out, with all that means to the future prosperity of Thanet and indeed to the whole country. He points out that Thanet is in an area of high unemployment and has asked Mr. Wilson to intervene personally to save what he stresses is a project of supreme national importance. Hoverloyd's managing director, Mr. Leslie Colquhoun, is in London and was not available to comment on this latest shock move.
Kent miners are planning an all-out fight to save their threatened coalfield from extinction. The position of the whole coalfield is in doubt, and one colliery, Tilmanston, may close by the summer. The coal board announcement on the future is now imminent, and Area Secretary of the Mine Workers Union, Mr. Jack Dunn, is already drawing up contingency plans for union action if the board sounds Tilmanston's death knell. The union has also mounted a big campaign to win the support of local authorities throughout East Kent.
Former Irish international goalkeeper Norman Hugh Pritchard, who is licensee of the Belmont Hotel at Hastings, pleaded guilty at Hastings today to receiving 2,000 cigarettes and 50 cigars, knowing them to have been stolen. He was fined £40 and ordered to pay £10 5 shillings compensation to the loser.
The oil, which has badly polluted the beaches at Herne Bay, could prove a major disaster for the resort. That's the view of Town Councillor Mr. Kent Meehan. The oil is lying thickly on some beaches at high water mark. It came ashore without warning a few days ago, and weekend trippers found their shoes and clothing badly soiled. Work has already started on clearing the oil, but Councillor Meehan says he doubts whether the town has the manpower or financial resources needed to clean the beaches before summer. And now he's to table a special question to the Town Council, asking what help the County Council and the government can give.
One of Britain's leading experts in pyrotechnics celebrated his golden wedding with a bang today. He's Mr. Alfred Shermilly, who lives with his wife at Kingsdown and Deal, and today he marked his 50th wedding anniversary by a celebration salvo of rockets. Mr. Shermilly's many wartime gadgets were highly successful against the enemy. RAF Pathfinders dropped his 7 million candle power flares to illuminate ground targets on D-Day, and American commandos swarmed up ropes anchored on 200-foot high cliffs by his grapnel rockets. Among his peace-type inventions was a specially designed flare for the Queen's flight of helicopters.
A young housewife appeared with 2 men at Southend today, accused of a petrol bomb attack on a police car crew. She's Mrs. Susan Margaret Deed of no fixed address, and with Victor James Brooker and Roger Joyce, also of no fixed address, she was remanded in custody until Wednesday. Another forged fivers alert in Sussex. It came from the discovery of a counterfeit £5 note at Seaford. It's believed the note was passed in payment to a local trader. The story of one Gillingham man and his dog in Kenya has ended happily after all. Mr. Gerald Higgin was accused of insulting the Kenyan head of state by naming his great Dane after President Kenyatta. But now he's been acquitted and released by the court in Nairobi. And that's all for the moment. More in Southern News Extra tonight at 11:08.
Lend a helping hand from Liverpool to London, the Isle of Man to Cardiff. Looks as though it's gonna sweep the land. I'm back in Britain, yes, I'm back in Britain.
That was Geoffrey Stevenson, a salesman from Pembury in Kent who left Dover today for Paris on a Backing Britain campaign. And tomorrow he'll set up a stall at the foot of the Eiffel Tower with the object of selling 24 Union Jack carrier bags in the space of 1 hour. And if he succeeds, his reward will be a cup of tea in bed for the period of 1 year from his wife Daphne. It all started with an argument over the export drive, and she challenged him to go abroad and practice what he preaches. So Geoffrey now says, all I'm trying to do is to prove my point, that British salesmen should get out and sell. And the bet involves him having to sell at least 12 Union Jack carrier bags to Frenchmen or other foreigners in the space of 1 hour. And now let's go over to the newsroom to see what the rest of today's regional news is.
Threatening letters have been sent to the Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Michael Ramsey, following his attempts to persuade the government to change its mind over immigrant policy. The Archbishop is chairman of the committee dealing with immigrant problems, and he's had nearly 100 letters commenting on his actions. Some of them are said to have been unpleasant and threatening, and they've been passed to the police from the Archbishop's offices at Canterbury and Lambeth. Kent police have been keeping a watch on Canterbury Cathedral because of a threat that a group of immigrants would arrive in Canterbury and sleep in the cathedral precinct. A police spokesman said the letter arrived on Monday, and although observation had been kept on the cathedral, no one turned up.
A Canadian has appeared in court at Dover accused of attempting to smuggle 1¼ pounds of the drug cannabis. He is 20-year-old James White, and the case was adjourned for a fortnight. Then the magistrates agreed that White should be released on bail. That oil pollution at Herne Bay, and it's not as bad as had been thought. Today, the council chairman, Councillor W.H. Rogers, said the resort had experienced worse pollution in the past and they'd always been able to deal with it satisfactorily. He said he's absolutely confident that the council has the manpower and the resources to deal with it before the season. And this weekend, there's to be a big attempt to sell the resort to a party of 15 European travel agents. They'll come from France, Belgium, Holland and Germany, and there'll be a reception by the council and local hoteliers.
£120,000 worth of antiques have been on show at an antique fair at Hollingbourne near Maidstone, and the show was visited by dealers from the continent as well as from all parts of Britain. In the first 2 hours, there were nearly 700 visitors. There were special security precautions to protect the antiques, which were shown by 25 exhibitors, and the fair was described by an official as an outstanding success. A warning of floods in Kent. The river boards say that tonight's high tide, shortly after midnight, coupled with fresh to gale force westerly winds, could bring exceptionally high water.
The Swiss international racing driver Herbert Müller has been practicing in the Lyddon circuit near Canterbury. He's been trying out the new Formula One Gurney racing car, which he's just bought for more than £5,000. Müller, who's twice been European mountain racing champion, made some high-speed laps in the Gurney Formula One car, which was built at Rye in Sussex. A youth who'd been cut off by the tide at Stone Bay Broadstairs was rescued by an RAF helicopter today. The boy is 18-year-old Stephen Evans, and he waved his jacket to attract the attention of the helicopter, which was on a routine patrol. It was one of the highest tides of the season, and Stephen was soaked in the spray and had to be taken to hospital suffering from exposure.
A new divisional police headquarters is likely to rise on a Sussex bomb site. The Home Secretary is being asked to confirm a compulsory purchase order made by the Sussex Police Authority. It's for the bomb site between St Leonard's Road and the Avenue in Eastbourne, where the police hope to build their new divisional headquarters and section house. At the moment, their Eastern District Command is operating from Hailsham's new police station in George Street, and the police are anxious to have the Eastbourne site for their new home. The Conservatives have held the Devonshire ward on Eastbourne Council in a by-election with an increased majority. Mr Kenneth Berry was elected with a 321 majority over his ratepayer rival. Labour was bottom of the poll with just over 100 votes.
Villagers at Jevington near Eastbourne have been told that the road through their village must remain closed for another 5 weeks while a new sewer is laid. The work, which started about 3 weeks ago, involves 1¼ miles of road and is part of the village's new main drainage system. Altogether, it's a 6-month project, but it's being undertaken in 3 sections, so there'll be a minimum of disruption to the village.
Strood Hill, one of Rochester's worst traffic bottlenecks, is to be widened. Traffic on the A2 road to London is often held up by heavy lorries crawling up the steepest part of the hill, and there have been jams through Strood and Rochester High Streets at busy periods. And that's all for now.
The parents of 19-year-old Lawrence Jones flew over from America to see him play Antonio, he's on the left there, in The Merchant of Venice at Tunbridge, where he's in the mathematics form. He's the first American to play a Shakespearean role in a Tunbridge school play, and his parents flew back to New Jersey the following day, out from this damned spot, no doubt. And our report from Richard Morgan at Canterbury.
This is the face which launched 1,000 controversies. The face which for 32 years disrupted the cloistered quietude of Canterbury with words which reverberated around a fast-contracting world. It's the face of Hewlett Johnson, Doctor of Divinity, Doctor of Theology, Doctor of Philosophy, Master of Arts and Bachelor of Science. Perhaps the most criticised, unconventional, unashamedly political churchman of the century. They called him the Red Dean. As a communist and Christian, as the arch-enemy of the capitalist system, he was a legend in his lifetime, and often a thorn in the side of the church, of which he was part of the hierarchy. Hewlett Johnson was only silenced from his contentious preaching in 1966, when death finally overtook him at 92. Now Hewlett Johnson speaks again through the pages of his autobiography, Searching for Light. It tells with wit and sensitivity of a rumbustious life which brought him into contact with almost every international figure in his lifetime. And inevitably, the Red Dean, even in death, has plenty of sting. His wife, Noel Johnson, who incidentally is also his cousin, shared in his travels throughout the communist world, shared deeply too in his political persuasions. Their home in retirement in Canterbury was even called the Red House. But now, as she relaxes in the cathedral precincts, the corridors of ecclesiastical power must seem very quiet, very uneventful, which was something, at least, you could never say of Hewlett Johnson. I asked her whether the book was a lifetime's work, or written in retrospect, after retirement.
No, it was written over very many years. He always wanted to write an autobiography, so as to explain how his life had made him have the views that he now had. And so he wrote down about his childhood and about his parish over the years. And when he retired, it was a case of looking through all these manuscripts, finding them all, and putting them together.
Was it completed before he died?
Yes, it was, and this was a very great joy to him. It was completed just 3 weeks before he died.
The Dean rather skips over his early beginnings in the book. It takes only a few pages, I think. And yet he says one of his first assertions is that a child is well endowed if he comes from a home which is neither too rich nor too poor. This was something he felt quite strongly about, was it?
Yes, he always felt that a clergy home was an ideal home. Not very well off in most cases, but with books about it.
Throughout the book it becomes transparently clear that the Dean never had any compunction at all about mixing politics and religion.
He felt that politics was the art of living in a society, and therefore he felt that a religious man must take part in politics.
In the early part of the book he says that 2 apprentices, I think in a factory, helped to shape his early socialist thinking. Can you tell me something about this? Did he talk much about it?
Well, simply that he went, having got a university degree, into this factory, and rather felt that he was the man who had the learning, and that these were 2 rather uneducated boys. But as time went on, he began to realize that they knew and understood truths that he hadn't understood.
The Dean has the highest regard, hasn't he, for Stalin, which rather surprises me, because he's even been rejected after his death in his own country, hasn't he? Did this worry the Dean at all?
No, because this is a thing that happens in history. But he had no doubt that as history proceeds, just as with our Henry VIII or with Ivan the Terrible, Stalin would fall into his true place. He knew that there had been terrible things that had happened under Stalin, but Stalin grew up under a terrible regime, and he felt that the birth of this first socialist state was an extremely difficult thing, and because of this, it was impossible for it to be perfect.
What effect did the criticism that your husband received from the Archbishop and from the Church as a whole have on him and on you as a family?
It made for very difficult crises at times. Archbishop Fisher never gave Hewlett any chance to hear his side of it, what he'd seen abroad, to talk it over. The church was on the whole very antagonistic to him, and I should say afraid of him. And it made living in the precincts extremely difficult at times, with a very cold atmosphere. The contrast to this was when my husband went to London, or amongst the ordinary people of Canterbury. There was one time when he and the Archdeacon had attended some church function in London, and the Archdeacon went on to the Athenaeum to have lunch, and Hewlett went to a self-service cafeteria. He was very hungry, and so he piled his tray up high, and when he got to the cashier, she waved him on and said, "You've been paid for, sir." And he, very surprised, said, "Paid for? Who's paid for me?" That gentleman ahead. And so he went and found the table where the gentleman ahead was sitting, and sat down and had lunch with him and talked to him. He was a bus driver, and he'd been at one of his meetings and admired him.
The book is entitled Searching for Light, and having read it and known the Dean right up until the time he died, do you believe that at 92 he'd finally found it?
Yes, he was always certain. He could not define the light, but he was always absolutely certain that it was there.
Mrs. Johnson, I must put this to you. When your husband died, he died a comparatively wealthy man, didn't he? How did he manage to equate this with his socialist principles?
Because he felt that living in a capitalist society, you had to use the weapons of capitalism. He thought this out very seriously. If he had given away everything that he possessed, he would have had no power to fight with in this present age. Therefore, he felt that he must keep what he had and use it to the very best of his ability.
Richard Morgan talking to Mrs. Hewlett Johnson about the Red Dean's autobiography, Searching for Light, which is published by Michael Joseph for 50 shillings. And now, news of two fishing competitions this weekend. There's a beach competition all day Sunday at West Beach, Herne Bay. And on the same day, it's the Deal Open Beach Festival, organised by the Royal Marines Angling Club. And talking of fish, before Richard Morgan went to Canterbury, he had a word with the fishermen of Newhaven.
Since time immemorial, the inshore fishermen have plied their trade from Newhaven harbour. For centuries, their small craft, often buffeted by the cruel sea and winds, have arrived back here with their gleaming and slippery cargo. And sometimes they've returned only to further hardship and more heartbreaks. Because in times of glut, they might just as well have thrown the fish that they've harvested from the sea straight back, because they're worth virtually nothing. But now these men, who are the poor relations of almost every industry in this country, have found the answer. Nothing revolutionary, nothing scientifically spectacular, just 2 tons of ice a day. They take it to sea with them, and as soon as the fish is pulled aboard, it's put in ice-lined cases. And after unloading from the boats, it's taken to a small plant and iced again. The big companies have been doing it for years, but the small fishermen couldn't afford it. And these fishermen, notoriously rugged individualists, have at last managed to get together. They've pooled their resources, and with the aid of a considerable bank loan, have founded a company. The cold store itself cost more than £5,000, and in addition they've opened a shop where they retail their own Newhaven caught fish. The ice and the newly purchased lorry means now that if there's a glut on the Brighton market, they can go to inland sales, often Billingsgate, and get a fair price for their hard-won merchandise. What has the consortium meant to local skippers?
What it's really given us is security, you see, and the future of the fishing in Newhaven has increased because of the consortium in another way, you see, because there are more boats fishing now. You see, without the consortium, the fleet wouldn't have been as big.
Tell me, without this consortium being formed, what do you think the future of fishing in Newhaven would have been?
Oh, pretty poor. I don't think it would have gone very far. I think quite a few of the boats really wouldn't have survived.
Well, from my point of view, it's certainly made a difference between existing and getting a living.
Approximately about 2 years ago, I was fishing on the same boat as I'm on now, and I'd go ashore because I'm afraid I just couldn't keep my family on the money that we were earning. We were catching the fish, but prices went down, and some of it was dumped.
The company was the brainchild of Roy Greening, who is now its chairman. He gave up fishing on doctor's orders and dedicated himself to helping the men still at sea.
Mr. Greening, as the chairman, what sort of impact and what sort of effect do you think this consortium has had on Newhaven as a fishing harbour?
Well, I think it's building the industry, or the odd fishermen into what might be a local industry.
Fishermen are notoriously individuals and very independent, and you're their chairman. Just how much difficulty do you have in ruling over them?
Yes, I agree. We're all a bit cussed, but one advantage I have got, being a fisherman myself, I understand their feelings in these a lot of matters. And I think basically they're a fine crowd of chaps, and it's a matter of understanding them and understanding their points of view, and not trying to push them or rush them to sort of develop things gradually.
Is it true to say that you inshore fishermen are rather poor relations in this industry?
Well, basically, yes. But again, we must accept that there are a number of problems outside of even our own control, and that inasmuch as inshore fishing, you're restricted to weather, landings are sometimes erratic, therefore you can't always guarantee markets, and from the buyer's point of view, it's difficult for them sometimes to deal with us because there's erratic supply.
Tell me something about your retail shop in Newhaven. Is the intention there perhaps to undercut?
No, we're not out to undercut. The purpose of the little shop that we've opened was to meet local needs so that local fish, and really good quality fish, would be available to local people. Whereas normally, when the boat's landed from the fish, it's iced and packed and sent to wholesale markets, Newhaven being bypassed.
So far, Mr. Greening, has there been very much interest shown by other small ports who may one day follow in your footsteps?
Yes, since we've been in operation, which is our first 12 months, I've had quite a number of inquiries for help and advice and know-how into what we're trying to do here. But mind you, I mean, I don't think we've got the perfect answer yet. It's our first year, and with the cooperation of our members, we hope to develop steadily in the future.
The company has now been in existence for 12 months, and as the men labour to put the fish ashore, perhaps the most remarkable thing is that the fishermen have managed to stick together and remain of the same opinion for one whole year. May the future outlook remain clear. Good fishing, gentlemen.
And it has, apparently, because the members of the Newhaven Fishermen's Society have been told by their chairman, Mr. Roy Greening, who you saw just there, that business has been so good that he's proposing a 7.5% dividend on all shares held, and they're also giving serious thought to the idea of opening a second retail shop in the area of Greater Newhaven. And now for a report from Rosemary Dunnage, who's been to Hastings again this week.
I don't know if it's the precarious position of his studio, perched like an eyrie over old Hastings, or his previous pictures of boxers almost crucified in the ring that has inspired Tom Hill. But his 14 Stations of the Cross give a new excitement and bright revival to religious painting. Almost completed, the pictures are bigger and painted with more brutality than was previously dared. By making Jesus look like 1968's idea of a young man, he hopes to give the crucifixion everyday aptness. We still crucify each other today, he says, with a careless remark or an unkind action. Traditions have been whisked away to reveal biblical characters as ordinary people, which may upset some. On the other hand, the pictures make us think of us and what we do today, and less of them and the mistakes they made. Using mostly somber colours, with white highlights, the artist dramatizes the action of the central figures, and to underline the modern interpretation of an old subject, Tom Hill brings in local Sussex backgrounds, even showing the very modern Roman Catholic church at Langley, near Eastbourne, where the pictures will finally hang. But on Sunday, before they're placed in the church, they're on view to everyone in the Congress Theatre, Eastbourne. The realism and truth of Tom Hill's work is, thank goodness, heading the tide away from the travesties that we've seen made of wire and light bulbs that have masqueraded under the name of art in the last decade. In New York, the critics proclaim his rather classic style as a welcome piquance to the jaded palates of the connoisseurs. But to you and me, these are beautiful pictures painted with a new approach and a thoughtful sincerity.
Hello again. Deal Borough, whose castle you saw just there, has been granted a new coat of arms by Garter, King of Arms. And over 2,000 years of history are contained in the new design, from the landing of Julius Caesar on Deal Beach in 55 BC, represented by that centurion on the left there, to the modern Royal Marine. And Sir Robert Menzies, Lord Warden of the Cinque Ports, has given the special permission to include that silver oar of the Cinque Ports up at the top there. But just how do you go about getting a new coat of arms? Well, here's Alderman Charles Seed, who, when he was Mayor of Deal, instigated the movement for the new arms, talking to Rosemary Dunnage.
Why, Alderman, in this modern day and age, did you go about seeking such a medieval thing as a coat of arms?
Well, most boroughs have their own coat of arms, but Deal, since its incorporation in 1699, has used the arms of Sandwich. And when I was Mayor in 1965, the borough decided to have its own coat of arms, so I signed a petition for Lord Earl Marshal, Duke of Norfolk, for our own. And this is what we have today.
Can any town just go and ask for a coat of arms? Or?
Yes, they can apply. Any town can apply.
And what qualifications, I mean, what goes into a coat of arms?
Well, it's usually some historical connotation, like as you've heard, the Roman centurion is commemorated by the landing. Incidentally, it's the 2012th anniversary of Julius Caesar's death today, the Ides of March.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chelsea.
And news this week that possibly one of the most important fossil discoveries of this century has been discovered 325 miles south of the South Pole. It's a fragment of jawbone only about 2.5 inches long, and it's a relic of an amphibian resembling the old salamander who lived 20 million years ago. And there's a boy in Canterbury who'll be thrilled by that piece of news.
He's 12-year-old Robert Matthews of Whitstable Road at Blean, who collects things like this sea urchin from Chalk found on the beach at Tankerton, or these shark's teeth from Thanet Sands at Canterbury. Robert, who goes to Kent College, has been collecting since he was 7 and has one of the finest private collections in Kent. He wrote to us, "Recently I had the joy of finding 2 very rare fossils. I submitted them to the paleontology department of the British Museum. They were extremely interested and requested that they be presented to the National Collection."
It's often said these days that the art of public speaking has died out, but the English-speaking Union believes in encouraging it amongst schoolchildren. This week they held the Kent area finals of their public speaking contest in St Alphege Hall at Canterbury. And who knows, perhaps there's a future Home Secretary amongst these youngsters. They're from Clarendon House Grammar School, Ramsgate, the Nativity Convent at Sittingbourne, and Sir Roger Manwood's Sandwich. Certainly their subjects had a political ring, with titles such as Britain's Role in the World. The team winners will compete in the South East Area Regional Finals at Brighton at the end of the month, and they're the Sir Roger Manwood A team, who received their prizes from the Mayor of Canterbury.
And here's Sports File with Malcolm Mitchell.
Soccer and Gillingham field an unchanged side at home to Barrow, relying on the same team which took a point at Grimsby on Wednesday evening. Southend left half Joe Ashworth went down with flu today and misses tonight's game with Darlington. Hastings, without a league success since early December, hope to have newcomer 20-year-old Clive Lomas in attack at Yeovil. 8 of the playing staff have accepted new contracts, which mean cuts in their wages by 40% for the rest of the season. And here are your fixtures. Eastbourne United meet Dorking at home, and manager Bill Lansdowne makes no change in the team which last week got United into the semi-final of the Sussex Senior Cup. And is this a record? Mr T. Brawl of Lilyvale Cottages, Smeeth, Ashford has 2 matches to go to notch up 250 consecutive league and cup games. He's 27 and plays left half for Braben and Smeeth Football Club, who are at home to Woodchurch tomorrow and away to Aldington next Saturday. Athletics, and it's the English Schoolgirls Cross-Country Championships in Lancashire tomorrow. 15-year-old Linda Stevenson of Canadian Avenue, Gillingham, will represent Kent in the intermediate event over 1 3/4 miles. Fencing and the FA contests of the Kent County Championships will be at Old Park Barracks, Dover, on Sunday. Weightlifting and the Senior and Junior South Eastern Counties Olympic Championships are at the Granville Club, Ramsgate, tomorrow. Boxing and the Faversham Club stages a contest at the Lecture Hall next Thursday. Table tennis, and there's an international match, England versus Belgium, at the Duncan Bowen School Centre, Ashford, tomorrow evening. It's part of the Ashford Association's 21st birthday celebrations. And finally, hockey, the Frank Mason Memorial Tournament for senior Kent hockey schools is on Thursday at Kent College at Canterbury.
Students in the catering department at Thanet Technical College are hard at work preparing for 2 royal occasions next week. On Thursday, Princess Marina is opening Sittingbourne College of Education, and the Thanet students are catering for a buffet lunch for 300 guests. 20 of the students will wait at table, and 10 will help in the kitchen. And the next day, 3 coaches will carry a party of 45 and all their equipment to Hadlow College of Agriculture and Horticulture for a visit by the Duke of Edinburgh. There, the students will be coping with a sherry party, lunch for 25 and tea for 400. And now let's ask Trevor Baker if it's going to be a right royal weekend for weather.
Well, no, John, I'm afraid it's not going to be that sort of weekend. What I expect is rather cloudy weather throughout the weekend, probably some rain now and again, and it'll be quite windy too. Today, there's been very showery weather over the whole of the country, with quite a few thunderstorms this afternoon in eastern districts of England. That showery weather is moving away to the east, and out here there's a warm front which is moving down towards us. That's fairly weak in its southern portion, so it probably won't give much rain in southern England. There'll be much more rain in the north from that part. Here's the forecast for afternoon tomorrow, with a low approaching the Hebrides. Now, it'll probably start fine in eastern districts of England, but apart from that, the day over the whole of the British Isles will be cloudy, and there'll be periods of rain as these fronts move across. As I said before, rainfall amounts in the south are probably quite small. Sea crossings are going to be rather rough throughout the weekend because of the very strong winds. Now the forecast for southern England. Southeast England, rather. In a few places there'll be a little ground frost tonight, but probably no air frost. Minimum air temperatures about 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow afternoon, temperatures will reach about 48. And winds, which will be northwesterly and quite strong for much of the night with gales over the sea, will become southwest to west during tomorrow and decrease a little, but they'll be still quite breezy overland. Now for the general weather. This evening there'll be quite a few more showers in southeast England, some of them quite heavy. They'll gradually die out, and most of the night will be dry and clear. Now, during tomorrow, the morning should be dry, probably and quite sunny too. But that cloudy weather from the west will spread in during the afternoon and evening, and there may be some rain now and again during the afternoon and evening. There won't be any fog at all, night or day. So that's the general story for the soccer matches of Brighton and Gillingham tomorrow. Perhaps some rain towards the end of the game. Sea angling, very choppy seas. I've got a whole list of weddings here. For Marie and Brian at Margate, Christine and Dick, Janet and David, Beryl and Michael, all at Deal, Adrian and Carol at Faversham, Sylvia and Raymond at Queenborough, Maureen and Paul and Jane and Alfred at Hawkhurst, Barbara and Sammy at Rye, Leonora and Robert at Rochester, Sue and Brian at Whitstable, Glenda and Michael at Wye, Irene and Michael, Jane and Jack, Pauline and Brian, all at Dover, Janet and Ronald and Glenys and Barry at Canterbury, Julie and David and Pearl and Clive at Woolsborough, Sandra and Brian at Ramsgate. For all of you, I think a cloudy day, but probably a dry one as well. That's the end of my forecast.
Well, at least it should cheer them up in Chatham, where we hear it's snowing heavily at the moment. Anyway, don't worry, you know what they say. If you have a carefree, happy sensation this weekend, Tuesday will budget for you. And now for the rest of your evening's viewing on Southern Television. And good night.
Good night.
Good night.